the cry that cut through the smoke. The ground shook beneath Reed's boots as he walked through the burning ruins of the alien outpost. Thick black smoke curled through the air, making it hard to breathe. His helmet's filters buzzed, trying to keep the air clean. All around him, broken metal, scorched stone, and strange alien bodies lay still. He was alone. His squad had gone ahead. Their orders were clear: search, report, move. No delays, no distractions. But then, it happened. A sound. Small, weak. Like a soft whimper. Reed stopped. He turned his head slowly, eyes scanning through the smoke. For a second, he thought it was a radio glitch. Then it came again. A cry. High-pitched. Afraid. Not a scream. Not pain. A child. Reed frowned. That can't be right, he whispered. There weren't supposed to be children here. This outpost had been used by the monstrous Vulcan species, creatures that looked like walking bones and claws. No one had ever seen them raise families. They didn't even believe in love, just war. But that cry, it didn't match them. It was soft. Sad. Human? No, not possible. But maybe alien, and alone. Reed hesitated. The smart thing would be to ignore it and rejoin the others. But something inside him wouldn't let him move forward. He turned and followed the sound. He walked past broken doors and strange red symbols painted on the walls. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. The fire didn't reach here. It was quiet, too quiet. Then he heard it again, clearer now. Help, please. It wasn't English, but somehow he understood it. It was the way it was said, full of fear, full of hope. Reed stepped over twisted pipes and rubble until he saw it. A small cage, metal, rusted, hidden in the corner of a dark room. Inside was a child, tiny, alien, maybe no older than 6 or 7, if he compared her to human. Age. Her skin was soft gray with faint glowing patterns like stars on her arms and cheeks. She had big eyes, too big for her small face, and white hair that fell in tangled curls. Her face was covered in dirt. Her knees were bruised. Her voice shook as she looked at him. "Are you monster?" she asked quietly, in her own language. Reed didn't move. His heart thudded. She was terrified, trapped. "No," he said gently. He knelt down. "I'm not here to hurt you." She stared at him, confused, as if she had never heard kindness before. He placed his gun on the ground and slowly reached. "Out. I'll get you out," he whispered. The lock was strange, but Reed managed to break it open with a small cutting tool from his belt. The moment the door clicked open, the child backed up against the far wall of the cage, shaking. He waited. He didn't reach in. He didn't force her. After a few long seconds, she crawled forward, slowly, and touched his hand. It was cold and small, but alive. "You came," she whispered. "You came for me." Reed picked her up carefully. She was light, too light, as if she hadn't eaten in days. He looked around. Something wasn't right. Why would monsters keep a child? Why in a cage? She wasn't one of them. Her features were different, softer, kinder. And then his eyes landed on the wall behind the cage. Words, written in dried blood. "The bait still breathes." Reed's blood turned cold. This wasn't a prison, it was a trap. And now that he had touched the bait, something had been triggered. A deep growl echoed from the hallway behind him. Not one, not two, multiple. The Vulcan were coming. Reed lifted the child into his arms. She buried her face into his neck and whispered, "Please don't leave me." He tightened his grip and ran. The smoke grew heavier, the shadows deeper. But Reed didn't stop. Not now. not with that voice still ringing in his ears. The cry that had cut through the smoke, the cry that no one else had answered, except him. Her eyes were not of this world. Reed found an old shelter, carved into the rocks, dark, cold, but hidden. He placed the child on a dusty mat and checked his scanner. No movement nearby, but he knew it wouldn't last. The Volcran were hunting, and they had already caught his scent. The girl hadn't said a word since they escaped. She just watched him, silent, still, like a statue. But her eyes, they were not normal. They were large, silver blue and glowing faintly in the dark. They didn't look scared now. They looked ancient, deep, like they held secrets no child should ever carry. "Do you have a name?" Reed asked softly. She blinked, tilted her head and finally whispered, "Luma." "Luma," he repeated. "That's a pretty name." She didn't smile, just looked at him like she didn't understand what pretty meant. Reed opened a ration pack and handed her a small protein bar. She stared at it, sniffed it, then slowly nibbled like a tiny animal. Her fingers were shaking. "How long were you in that cage?" he asked. "Long time," she said. "Since Sky burned." Reed frowned. That was weeks ago. Maybe longer. No child should survive that long without help. And yet, here she was, eating, alive, watching. But there was something else. He noticed faint marks on her skin, tiny glowing veins near her temples, pulsing softly like light through crystal. It wasn't natural. It looked engineered. "What are you?" "Luma," he whispered to himself. She tilted her head again. "You're not like others. You didn't hurt me." "No," he said firmly. "I never will." She stared at him again, and her eyes seemed to glow a little brighter. Suddenly, she grabbed his hand. Reed froze. She wasn't afraid now. Instead, she closed her eyes and leaned her forehead against his palm, and in that moment, he saw it. Not with his eyes, but inside his mind. Flashes. Memories that weren't his. Dark labs. Cold metal. Voices arguing. "She's too dangerous. We need her alive. Use her to control the beasts." Then screams. So many screams. And a woman, crying, screaming Luma's name, dragged away by clawed hands. Then darkness. Reed gasped and pulled his hand away. "What was that?" he whispered. Luma's voice was barely a whisper. "You saw what they did. I show you so you believe." His heart pounded. "You put those thoughts in my head." She nodded slowly. "I'm not normal," she said. "That's why they call me Key. That's what they want." Reed felt a chill in his bones. She wasn't just a child. She was something else. Something built. Something feared. Then, sudden, footsteps outside, heavy, wet, inhuman. Reed grabbed his weapon and placed himself in front of Luma. But she touched his shoulder. "They don't know where we are, not yet, but soon." "How do you know?" She tapped her head. "I can feel when they're near. I hear them inside. Always." Reed stared at her, stunned. She was like a tracker. Or more than that, like a receiver. Like a living sensor. "Did they make you this way?" he asked. Luma looked down. "They say I was born broken. So they fixed me." Reed clenched his fists. This wasn't war. This was cruelty. She was just a child. But to them, she was only a tool. A weapon. A thing to use. Not anymore. Not if he had anything to say about it. He took a deep breath and looked around. "We can't. Stay here," he said. "They'll come. We need to move." Luma nodded slowly. "I trust you, Reed." He was surprised. "Why?" She looked up at him, her glowing eyes warm for the first time. "Because you looked at me like I was alive." Those words hit harder than any weapon. He packed the gear, lifted her gently and headed back into the tunnels, his mind racing with questions, but his heart burning with one truth. This child was more than just special. She was hunted, changed, feared. But most of all, she was his responsibility now. Whispers in the dark tunnels. The tunnels were old, cold, built long before any war reached this place. They twisted like a maze through the mountain's heart. Half metal, half stone. No lights. Just silence. And whispers. Reed walked slowly, his boots echoing on the ground. Luma held tightly to his back, arms around his neck, silent as a shadow. Her head rested on his shoulder, but her strange eyes were wide open, always watching. There were markings on the walls, ancient writing, not from any race Reed knew. Some glowed faintly, some pulsed like veins under skin. "Where are we?" he asked quietly. Luma didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "This place remembers." Reed frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed to a wall. A strange handprint was carved there, 4 fingers, long and thin, glowing blue. "This was their place," she said softly. "The ones before the monsters." Reed looked around. The air felt heavy here, like it was holding its breath. The deeper they walked, the colder it got, but not natural cold. A cold that felt like watching eyes. Suddenly, a soft hum passed through the air. Reed froze. "Did you hear that?" Luma nodded. "They do not like humans." "Who?" "The old ones," she said. "They sleep, but not fully." Reed scanned the area. Nothing showed on his device. But his skin tingled like static, like something was alive in the walls. He kept walking. They reached a large chamber. In the center stood a cracked control pillar, covered in dust and spiderwebs. Dead screens lined the sides. At its base, a skeleton sat slumped, arms still chained to the metal. Not human, not Volcran. Something else entirely. Reed knelt beside it, confused. "This is ancient." Luma stepped beside him. She didn't look scared. "This one tried to save others," she said. "Tried to hide children, like me." Reed looked at her. "You saw this?" She nodded. "Not saw, felt." "How?" She pointed at her forehead. "I hear echoes." Reed sat down slowly. His mind was spinning. How could one child carry so much knowledge, so many voices? "Did they put that in you?" he asked. Luma didn't speak. She walked up to the pillar and placed her small hand on it. The entire chamber lit up. Blue light flowed from her fingers into the walls, racing through ancient lines like water. Symbols flared, screens blinked awake. Reed stood, shocked. "What are you doing?" Luma turned slowly. "I opened the memory." Then a deep voice boomed around them, not from a speaker but from the air itself. "Project Luma. Failure to control. Escape detected. Retrieval order active." Reed grabbed her arm. "Shut it off. You just gave them our location." Luma stared at the glowing lines. "No, I gave you answers." Suddenly, the screen showed an old video. Men in white suits, scientists, soldiers, and her, Luma, lying on a cold table, crying, surrounded by machines. Subject Luma, genetic splicing complete, neural link enabled, memory pathways accessible through touch. Then screams. Her screams. Reed couldn't watch anymore. He turned away. "That's what they did to you?" Luma stood still. "Yes." "Why? Didn't you tell me before?" She looked at him, her voice calm but broken. "Because most run away when they see what I am." Reed walked over and knelt in front of her. "I'm not running." She blinked. Her eyes shimmered. "You don't think I'm a monster?" "No," he said. "They are. Not you." Just then, a rumble shook the floor. The Volcran were coming. Fast. "They heard the signal," Reed said. "We must go," Luma whispered. But before they could leave, something behind the wall moved. A panel opened, revealing a long, dark passage, one not shown on Reed's map. Luma pointed. "This is the forgotten path." Reed didn't ask how she knew. He grabbed his gear, lifted her into his arms, and ran down the hidden corridor. As they disappeared, into the dark, the last thing Reed heard was a whisper. Not Luma's voice, not his own, but something ancient from the walls themselves. "Protect the child, or all will fall again." The monster that spoke like a man. The hidden path twisted deeper underground. The walls were smoother now, like something had carved them, not built them. Reed's flashlight flickered. The air felt thick, like it hadn't been touched in years. Luma was silent on his back, her arms around his shoulders. But she was awake, listening. "I hear them," she whispered. "One is close, but not like the others." Reed stopped. "What do you mean?" Luma hesitated. "This one remembers being human." Reed turned, confused. "What?" Before she could answer, the tunnel shook with a sudden, heavy thud. Then another. Something large was coming. Reed raised his weapon, stepped forward slowly, and froze. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It looked like a Volcran, tall, bone-plated, hunched. Arms like blades, teeth like knives. But its eyes were human. One was blue. The other, scarred shut. It spoke. "Put the child down." Reed's hands tightened on his rifle. "You can speak?" The creature tilted its head. "I used to speak better, before they made me this." Luma stepped down from Reed's back. She walked toward the creature slowly. "Do you remember me?" she asked softly. The creature looked at her, and for a moment the monster's jaw shook. "You were just a baby." Reed was stunned. "You knew her?" The creature nodded. "Before the labs. Before they filled us with pain." Reed aimed his gun. "What are you?" The creature didn't flinch. "They called me Subject K7. I was a soldier, human. But they turned me into this thing, said it was for war." He looked down at Luma. She was their final test. Not weapon, not child. A key. "A key to what?" Reed asked. The creature's voice dropped to a whisper. "To every door in the galaxy that should have stayed, closed." Reed felt a chill in his chest. Luma looked up at him. "I didn't ask to be born like this." "I know," he said gently. The creature growled, not in anger, but sorrow. "They'll come. They always do. You should run, human." "And leave her?" Reed snapped. "Never." The creature looked at him for a long moment, then said something unexpected. "I will help you." Reed blinked. "What?" "She is not safe with them. She should not be alone. I remember what it was like, to be human. I will slow the others. You take her, and go." Luma stepped forward and touched his arm. "I'm sorry they hurt you." The creature knelt, lowering his blade-like arms. "You were always kind, even in the cage." Reed felt his throat tighten. This monster had once been a man, and Luma, just a small, strange child, had been the only kindness he remembered. "Come, with us," Reed said. The creature shook his head. "No, I can't hide like you, but I can fight. And maybe I can make my pain mean something." Suddenly, roars echoed down the tunnel. The real Volcran were near. Too many. Reed lifted Luma into his arms again. "Go," the creature said. "I'll give you time." Luma's eyes glowed. "You're not a monster." The creature smiled for the first time. A sad, broken smile. "No, just broken." Then he turned and ran toward the sound, roaring as he went. Reed ran in the opposite direction, his heart pounding. Behind him, echoes of battle shook the walls. Screams, explosions. But he didn't stop. Because now he knew the truth. They had taken humans and twisted them into monsters. They had taken children and made them into tools, and somehow, Luma was the center of it all. As he ran through the narrow passage, Luma whispered in his ear. I saw inside him. He dreamed of trees, of rain, of music. Reed swallowed hard. So did I, he said, and they both fell silent, running, escaping. But no longer afraid, because now they weren't just running from monsters, they were running toward something greater. The human who refused to run, Reed, was bleeding, not from a deep wound but from dozens of small cuts. His arms, face, and chest scraped by sharp walls, falling debris, and one close encounter with a Volcran scout. His breath was heavy. His muscles ached, but he didn't stop. He carried Luma like she was the most precious thing in the universe, because now he knew she was. The last thing the twisted creature had told him echoed in his mind. She is not a weapon. She is the door. She is the voice the stars once feared. Reed didn't understand it all, but he understood one thing. They would kill her to control her, and that was something he would never let happen. The tunnel opened into an abandoned facility, once human, now forgotten. Broken screens, cracked glass, old control panels. Reed kicked over a fallen chair and gently placed Luma down on a dusty bench. She looked pale, tired. You okay? He asked. She nodded slowly. I'm not hurt. But he saw her trembling fingers. He sat beside her. You don't have to be strong all the time, you know. I do, she whispered, because everyone else broke. Reed didn't say anything. He just placed his hand gently on hers. After a moment of silence, she asked, Why are you still here? Reed looked at her, surprised. What? You could have left, back when you found me, or after the monsters came. But you didn't. He chuckled softly. You think I could walk away after hearing you cry like that? She stared at him. Others did. Reed leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I didn't grow up with much, no parents, no love. But I remember being small, hungry, cold, wishing someone would just notice me. He looked her in the eyes. When I heard you cry, it was like hearing myself all over again. Luma blinked, tears gathering. And when I saw you in that cage, shaking, starving, I didn't see a weapon. I didn't see an alien. I saw a child, one no one else had chosen, so I did. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hallway. They were found. Luma stood, her eyes glowing brighter. They're coming again. Reed picked up his rifle. It had only 12 shots left. Not enough. He knew it, but he stood in front of Luma anyway. Back, straight, face calm. No more running, he said. Luma looked at him in shock. You'll die. Maybe, Reed said, but not before they understand one thing. He raised his gun toward the hallway. She's not theirs. She's mine. Now. The first Volcran appeared, claws ready. Reed fired, once, twice. 2 went down. 4 more replaced them. Then 6. They roared. Reed stepped forward, placing himself between the monsters and the girl behind him. He fired again. Then the rifle clicked. Empty. He threw it aside, pulled a small combat knife from his boot. The monsters closed in, but Reed didn't move. Behind him, Luma's hands began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the whole room lit with soft silver light. The Volcran paused. One growled, but something stopped them. Luma's voice rang out, not loud but filled with force. Stop. The air shimmered. The monsters howled, but they didn't attack. They turned. They ran. Reed turned slowly, eyes wide. What did you do? Luma was floating an inch off the ground, her hair glowing like a star. I didn't know before, she said softly. But now I do. Do what? Her eyes met his, and for the first time they weren't sad. They were strong. I'm not a weapon. She walked to him, placed her hand on his chest. I'm a voice. And Reed felt something inside him shift. like warmth, strength, peace. The pain faded. The fear vanished. She smiled. You didn't run. So now, neither will I. And in that broken room where a human made a stand with no bullets left, a bond was born. Not between soldier and mission, not between man and alien, but between two hearts who had been forgotten. And now the galaxy would remember them both. The hidden truth in her blood. The storm outside had reached the mountain's surface. Winds howled through broken towers. Lightning flashed through shattered domes. But deep below in the forgotten lab, everything was still. Reed sat beside Luma, breathing steady again. Her glow had faded, but something about her had changed, like she had crossed an invisible line. She wasn't just a scared child anymore. She was something greater. Reed had seen it. Power flowing through her hands, her voice pushing back monsters, without touch or weapons. But what he didn't understand was how. Luma, he said gently, what's inside you? She was quiet for a moment, staring at the ceiling. Then she whispered, blood, but not just mine. He looked at her, confused. What do you mean? She sat up and pointed to a cracked mirror on the wall. Do you see your face? Reed nodded. Yeah. Now look at mine. He glanced at her reflection, and he paused. He hadn't noticed it before. But her features, they weren't fully alien. Her jaw, her cheekbones, the shape of her hands, it was a mix, human and alien combined. You're part human, he said slowly. She nodded. They made me from many. Reed leaned back, shocked. You were created. She closed her eyes. In the lab. They used DNA from captured species. They tried to make someone who could speak to all minds, feel every thought, open the old gates. Reed remembered the monster in the tunnel, how it had called her a key, and now it made sense. They made you to control people, he said bitterly. Luma looked away. They wanted me to unlock weapons, doors sealed by ancient races, devices no one could power. But I didn't work the way they wanted. I cried, I asked for hugs, I wanted to be held. Her voice broke, so they locked me away. Reed stood and began pacing. You were never broken, he muttered. They just wanted you to be something cold, something easy to control. He stopped and looked at her. But you're not a machine, you're a person. Luma smiled softly. That's what scared them. Reed sat back down beside her. Why didn't they just destroy you? Her answer came like a stone in water. Because if I die, a signal goes out, all the doors open. All the old machines wake up, everything hidden comes alive. Reed stared at her. You're a failsafe. Yes, she whispered. If they couldn't use me, they wanted no one else to either. So they tied all their secrets to me. And now they're after you, Reed said, standing up. Because they know you're free. Suddenly, a light blinked on an old screen. Someone was watching. A crackly voice came through, a deep, cold tone. Human soldier, step away from the asset. You have 5 minutes to surrender. Luma flinched. It's them. Reed moved between her and the screen. I don't take orders from monsters, the voice replied, calm and sharp. You don't understand what she is. You think she's a child, but she holds death in her skin. Open her veins, and whole planets fall. Reed's eyes narrowed. You talk too much for someone who tortures kids, the voice hissed. You will die, but she will be reprogrammed. Then the screen went black. Luma stood, her voice steady. They're afraid. They always were. Reed put a hand on her shoulder. So what now? She looked at him, and for the first time her glow returned, soft and silver. We stopped running. Reed walked to the corner, where an old locker stood. Inside he found a dusty armor set, human-made, light but strong. He strapped it on, checked his knife, and loaded the last emergency blaster. Then he turned to Luma. She stood still, hands glowing, eyes calm. "They're going to try to take you," he said. "I know. They'll send machines, kill squads, maybe worse." She nodded. "And," he smirked, "I'll still be here." As alarms echoed through the halls and shadows moved above them, one thing was certain. They hadn't just created a weapon, they had created a choice. And now, for the first time in her life, Luma had chosen someone too. Only a human could be her guardian. The metal doors groaned open, boots marched in, tall, black-armored figures entered the ruined lab, their faces hidden behind masks, weapons drawn, movements sharp, cold, trained. But Reed stood in their way. No helmet. Just a scarred human face and tired eyes full of fire. Behind him, Luma stood still, small, glowing, silent, but not afraid. The commander raised a hand. "Step aside, human. Final warning." Reed didn't move. "No. You're outnumbered, outgunned. I've been that way since the day I found her." The commander took a step forward. "She's not yours. She's property of the Unity Research Division." Reed chuckled darkly. "She's nobody's property. She's a child. She breathes, she dreams, she cries. You think you own that?" No answer, just a nod. The soldiers raised their rifles, and that was it. Reed dove to the left, fired his last blaster charge, hitting the nearest soldier in the chest. Luma raised her hands. Light burst from her palms like a wave, knocking 3 attackers back without even touching them. Reed fought with everything he had, punches, kicks, knife strikes, fast, brutal, but they kept coming. One grabbed him from behind, another aimed at Luma. "No," Reed shouted, but before the shot fired, everything froze. Time stopped. The world turned white, and in the center of it, Reed floated, alone. Then a voice, not Luma's, not human, filled the space. "You chose to protect the key." He turned. "Who's there?" "We are the ones who built the doors, long before your kind walked the stars." A soft glowing shape appeared, not male, not female, not solid, just presence. "She is the last piece of us, but she chose you. That changes everything." Reed stared. "She's just a kid." "Yes, that's why she is more powerful than we ever were." A pause. "Would you give your life for her?" Reed didn't blink. "Yes." "Then we give you a gift." And with a soundless flash, time snapped back. The blaster fired, but the bolt stopped inches from Luma's chest, frozen mid-air, humming like a trapped bee. The soldiers froze too, their limbs locked in place. Luma looked around, confused. Reed stepped forward, not knowing what had changed, only that something had. Luma's eyes widened. "They chose you." "Who?" "The ones in the stars, the old ones. They saw your heart." She reached for his hand, and in that moment, her glow passed into him. Not all of it. Just enough. Enough to protect. Enough to guide. Enough to be her guardian. The soldiers began to vanish one by one, erased by light, not killed, removed, as if the galaxy itself had rejected them. Luma and Reed stood in the quiet that followed, surrounded by silence and dust. He looked down at her. "You okay?" Nodded. "They can't control me anymore." "Good," he said with a smile. "Because no one should ever control a child." She looked up at him with soft, bright eyes. "I want to stay with you forever." He kneeled, pulled her close, and whispered, "You already are." Days passed. The war didn't end, but a message spread quietly across systems about a strange girl who glowed like a star, and the human who stood alone to protect her. Some called her a myth, some called her a miracle. But to one man, she was just Luma. Not a weapon, not a project, but a child who finally found someone who stayed, and the galaxy would never forget them.